My name is Florence, and I need to tell you about the night I almost didn't survive. I was 23, living alone in a small apartment in Portland. It was my first real taste of independence, you know? No roommates, no parents, just me. I loved it, until the night everything changed. It started on a Tuesday in October. I'd gotten home late from work, around 11 p.m. The building was quiet, too quiet. My apartment was on the 3rd floor, and as I climbed the stairs, I had this overwhelming feeling that someone was watching me. I kept looking behind me, but the stairwell was empty. When I reached my floor, I noticed something immediately. My apartment door, it was cracked open, just slightly, maybe an inch. I froze. I knew I'd locked it that morning. I always locked it. My heart started pounding, so hard I could hear it in my ears. I pulled out my phone, ready to call 911, and I slowly pushed the door open with my foot. The lights were off. Everything looked normal from what I could see. I flipped the light switch. Nothing seemed disturbed. My laptop was still on the coffee table. My TV was still there. I checked every room, the bathroom, the bedroom, the closet. Empty. I convinced myself I'd just forgotten to pull the door shut all the way that morning. Stupid, right? But I wanted to believe it. I made dinner, watched some Netflix, and went to bed around 1 a.m. I remember lying there in the dark, still feeling uneasy. The exhaustion won, and I fell asleep. I woke up at 3:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I looked at my phone, and I woke up because I heard something. A sound I'll never forget. Breathing. Not my breathing. Someone else's. Heavy. Steady. Coming from inside my room. I didn't move. I couldn't. My entire body locked up. I kept my eyes squeezed shut, like a child hiding from monsters. But I could hear it. The breathing was close. Too close. Then, I felt it. The mattress shifted. Someone was sitting on the edge of my bed. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But I was paralyzed. The breathing continued, and then, I heard a voice. A man's voice. Barely a whisper. "I've been watching you, Florence." He knew my name. I don't know where I found the courage, but I opened my eyes. In the darkness, I could see a silhouette. A man, sitting at the foot of my bed, his back to me. He was just sitting there, watching the wall. I grabbed my phone under the covers and turned on the flashlight. The man stood up instantly. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie. But when the light hit him, God, I can still see his face. He was smiling. Not a normal smile. It was too wide. Unnatural. Like he was wearing a mask of human skin. He tilted his head at me, like a curious dog, and whispered, "You're prettier when you're sleeping." Then he walked out of my room, calmly, like he had all the time in the world. I called 911 the second he left. They found him in the building's basement. Turns out, he'd been living there for weeks. The superintendent said he'd been sneaking into apartments using a stolen master key. But here's the part that still haunts me. When the police searched his area in the basement, they found a duffel bag. Inside were photos. Dozens of photos. All of me. Sleeping. Eating. Watching TV. Some of the photos were taken from inside my apartment. He'd been coming in for weeks, watching me sleep, and I never knew. I moved out the next day, but I haven't slept with the lights off since. My name is Alex, and I used to love hiking alone. Used to. 3 years ago, I went on what should have been a routine day hike in the Appalachian Mountains. It was early spring. The trails weren't crowded yet, and I wanted some time to clear my head after a bad breakup. I parked at the trailhead around 8 a.m. The weather was perfect. Cool but not cold. The plan was simple. 6-mile loop, back to the car by noon. I made it to the halfway point without seeing another soul. That's when I noticed him. There was a man standing off the trail, maybe 50 yards ahead. He wasn't moving, just standing there, facing the trees. He was wearing jeans and a red flannel shirt. No backpack. No gear. I called out, "Hey, "You okay?" He didn't respond. Didn't even turn around. I figured maybe he was taking a leak or something. So I kept walking. But as I passed him, I glanced over, and he was still facing the trees. Not moving. Like a statue. Something about it felt wrong. Really wrong. But I kept walking. 20 minutes later, I saw him again. Same guy. Same red flannel. But now he was ahead of me on the trail. Just standing there. Facing away from me. I stopped. I hadn't passed anyone. There's no way he could have gotten ahead of me without me seeing him. The trail doesn't loop back on itself in that section. I started walking faster. I didn't call out this time. I just wanted to get past him and back to my car. As I approached, he turned his head, not his body, just his head. It rotated toward me with this slow, mechanical movement, and he smiled. I broke into a jog, then a run. I didn't care how it looked. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to get away from him. I ran for maybe 10 minutes straight. When I finally stopped to catch my breath, I looked back. He was there, right behind me, maybe 20 feet away, still smiling. How was he keeping up? I'd been running full speed, and he looked like he was just casually strolling. I ran again. This time I didn't stop until I reached the parking lot. I could see my car. I fumbled for my keys, hands shaking, and looked back one more time. The man was standing at the edge of the tree line, watching me, still smiling. I jumped in my car, locked the doors, and sped out of there. I didn't breathe easy until I was back on the highway. That night, I was telling my roommate about what happened. He pulled up his phone and showed me a local news article from 2 years earlier. A hiker had gone missing on that same trail. They found his body 6 months later, deep in the woods. He was wearing jeans and a red flannel shirt. The article included a photo. It was him, the same man I'd seen on the trail. But according to the article, he'd been dead for 18 months before I saw him. I've never gone hiking alone again. My name is Emily, and I need to tell you about the phone call that almost got me killed. I was 16. It was summer break, and my parents had gone out of town for the weekend, leaving me home alone. I was responsible enough, they said. What could go wrong? Everything. It was around 10 p.m. on Friday night. I was watching TV in the living room when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Silence. Just breathing. I hung up. Figured it was a wrong number or some kid pranking people. But then it rang again. Same number. I answered. Who is this? This time a voice. A man's voice. Calm. Almost friendly. Emily, I can see you. I looked around. All the curtains were drawn. The doors were locked. I tried to sound tough. This isn't funny. I'm hanging up. You're wearing a blue t-shirt, he said, and gray sweatpants. You're sitting on the couch. I looked down. I was wearing a blue t-shirt and gray sweatpants. My blood went cold. I ran to the front door. Locked. I checked the back door. Locked. All the windows were closed. The phone rang again. Where are you? I screamed into the phone. Close, he whispered. Very close. I grabbed a knife from the kitchen and ran upstairs to my room. I locked the door and called 911. The dispatcher said they were sending someone, but it would take 10 minutes. 10 minutes felt like an eternity. The phone rang again. I answered. The police are coming. They're going to find you. He laughed. It was a low, chilling sound. Check under your bed, Emily. My entire body went numb. I was standing in the middle of my room, knife in hand, staring at my bed. I didn't want to look. Everything in me was screaming not to look, but I had to know. I got down on my knees and lifted the bed skirt. 2 eyes stared back at me. He was under my bed. He'd been there the whole time. I screamed and ran out of the room. I could hear him scrambling out from under the bed, chasing me. I made it down the stairs and out the front door just as the police pulled up. They caught him in my backyard, tried to climb the fence. When they searched him, they found his phone. The call log showed he'd been calling me all night. But here's what made my skin crawl. The police found a journal in his car. Pages and pages of notes about me. My schedule. Where I went to school. What time my parents left for work. He'd been stalking me for months. And in the back of the journal, there was a list. A list of names. 8 names. 7 were crossed out. Mine was number 8. The police told me later that they'd linked him to multiple cold cases. Missing girls. All of them were found dead. I was supposed to be number 8. If I hadn't answered that phone call, if he just waited a little longer before revealing himself, I wouldn't be here to tell you this story. My name is David, and I want to tell you about the neighbor who made me question everything I thought I knew about evil. 5 years ago, I moved into a small duplex in a quiet suburb outside Chicago. The neighborhood was perfect. Tree-lined streets, friendly people, kind of place where everyone knows everyone. My neighbor, Mr. Carver, lived on the other side of the duplex. He was in his 60s, retired, kept to himself mostly. Polite, always waved when he saw me. Seemed harmless. God, I was so wrong. The first weird thing I noticed was the smell. Every few weeks, there'd be this odor coming from his side of the house. Like rotten meat mixed with chemicals. It was nauseating. I mentioned it to him once. He laughed it off, said he was doing some taxidermy as a hobby, mounting deer heads and stuff. It made sense at the time. But then I started hearing sounds at night. Scraping, dragging, sometimes voices. Not conversations, just mumbling. Like someone talking to themselves. One night, around 2 a.m., I heard a scream. A woman's scream. It was brief, cut off suddenly, but it was definitely a scream. I called the police. They came, knocked on his door. Mr. Carver answered in his bathrobe, confused. He said his TV had been on loud, probably an action movie. The cops looked around, didn't see anything suspicious, and left. But I knew what I'd heard. I started watching him. I know how that sounds, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I'd peek through my blinds, watch him come and go. He always left the house around 10 p.m., carrying a large duffel bag. He'd come back an hour later, the bag empty. One night, I followed him. He drove to a wooded area about 15 minutes from our house. He parked, grabbed the duffel bag, and walked into the trees. I waited in my car for 20 minutes. When he came back, the bag looked heavy. Full. I went to that spot the next day. It took me a while to find it, but eventually did. There was a cleared area, hidden from the road, and in the center a tarp, covering something. I pulled back the tarp. It was a hole, a deep hole, and inside, bones, human bones. I called the police immediately. They excavated the site. They found the remains of 4 women. All of them had been reported missing over the past 3 years. Mr. Carver was arrested that night. During the investigation, they searched his side of the duplex. The basement. God, the basement. He'd built a soundproof room. There were chains on the walls, dried blood on the floor, and photos. Dozens of photos of women. Some I recognized from missing person posters. But here's the part that still haunts me. The police found a journal. In it, Mr. Carver had written about every kill in detail. Dates, names, methods. One entry stopped me cold. It was dated 3 weeks before I moved in. It read, "New neighbor arrives soon. Young, male, lives alone. He seems curious, nosy. I'll need to be more careful if he becomes a problem." The entry ended there, unfinished. The detective told me later that I'd likely interrupted his plans. He'd been getting sloppy, and I'd noticed. If I hadn't followed him that night, if I just minded my own business, he would have killed me next. I moved out the next week, but sometimes, late at night, I still think about those 3 weeks before I followed him. All those nights I was sleeping, just on the other side of the wall from a serial killer. And how many times he must have stood outside my door, deciding whether or not I should live. My name is Jennifer, and I want to tell you about the night I picked up a passenger who wasn't human. I drove for a rideshare company in college. Night shifts mostly. The pay was decent, and it helped with tuition. I'd done it for 2 years without any major incidents. Until that night. It was late October, around 2 a.m. on a Wednesday. I was about to call it quits for the night when I got a ping. Pickup location was a residential area about 10 minutes away. Destination was across town. Good fare. I accepted. When I pulled up to the address, it was a normal suburban house. Porch light was on. A woman was standing on the sidewalk, waiting. She got in the back seat. "Thanks for coming," she said. Her voice was soft, pleasant. "No problem," I replied, starting the drive. We drove in silence for a few minutes. I glanced in the rearview mirror a couple times. She was staring out the window, her face expressionless. Then she spoke. "Do you believe in ghosts?" Weird question, but hey, I'd had stranger conversations with passengers. "I don't know," I said. "Maybe." "Why?" She smiled. "Because I am one." I laughed, thinking she was joking. "Good one." But she didn't laugh. She just kept staring out the window. "I died 3 years ago," she continued. "Car accident. Right on this road, actually." I glanced at the GPS. We were on a 2-lane highway, surrounded by dark fields. No street lights. That's terrible," I said, not knowing what else to say. "You're going to die tonight too," she whispered. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Excuse me." I looked in the rearview mirror. She was smiling, but it wasn't a normal smile. Her mouth was stretched too wide. Her eyes were completely black. "You should stop the car," she said calmly. "I am taking you to your destination," I stammered. "No," she said. "You should stop the car. Right now." I didn't know what to do. Every instinct told me pull over and tell her to get out. But something in her voice, it sounded almost like a warning. I slowed down, and that's when I saw it. Up ahead, maybe 100 yards, there was a semi-truck. It had jackknifed it across both lanes. No lights, no warning signs. If I hadn't slowed down, I would have hit it at full speed. I slammed on the brakes, stopping just feet from the wreckage. I was breathing hard, hands shaking. I looked in the rearview mirror to see if my passenger was okay. The back seat was empty. I got out of the car, looked around. No one. She was just gone. The police arrived about 10 minutes later. While I was giving my statement, I mentioned the passenger, described her, told them what she'd said. One of the officers went pale. He pulled up something on his phone and showed me a photo. "Is this her?" It was. "Same woman, same face. That's Amanda Reyes," he said quietly. "She died 3 years ago. Car accident. Hit a semi-truck that had jackknifed it on this highway. The exact spot where I'd almost crashed." The officer explained that there'd been 6 fatalities on that stretch of road since Amanda's death. All of them hit the same blind curve where trucks would occasionally break down. "Some drivers have reported seeing her," he said. "A woman standing on the side of the road, or sitting in their back seat, warning them to slow down." I checked my rideshare app when I got home. The ride was still logged. Pickup time, destination, everything. But the passenger name field was blank. And the pickup address I'd gone to? According to county records, that house had been abandoned for 5 years. I quit driving that night because I realized something terrifying. She saved my life, but she only appears to drivers who are about to die, which means I should have died on that road. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder, did I? 5 stories. 5 people who came face to face with something they'll never fully understand. These stories were sent to me by real people. I changed their names to protect their privacy. But everything else, everything they experienced, is exactly as they told it. Sometimes the scariest encounters aren't with monsters or demons. Sometimes they're with other people. Sometimes they're with things we can't explain, and sometimes they're with ourselves. If you have a true scary story you'd like to share, send it to me. You might hear it featured in a future video. Until next time, stay safe out there, and maybe keep your doors locked tonight.